Morning, everybody. This is Jeremiah with Man with the Mug, and I'm really glad you're here. We're going to get back into Walden today. Let me pull it out. Oh, if I can grab it. There we go. I have here a Bucky mug. For those of you in America, this is a gas station franchise. And for those of you in America, or for those who have not, especially there's the World Cup going on. So if you're from outside the United States and you've been to America for the World Cup, if you're lucky enough to have been to a Bucky's, y'all know what this is. Um, this has a funny story behind it, actually. I mean, not funny, but cool story, I should say. A buddy of mine was getting married probably about a month ago now, for in a couple states away from where I live, and our state doesn't have a Bucky's, but this one does, the one I was going to, and so I figured I would stop there and get one, but only on the way back because I excuse me, I just woke up a little bit ago. It's early in the morning. My family's still asleep, so we got a nice big mug of coffee here today. Oh, excuse me. Wow. It's interesting. I feel like I slept well, but I'm still pretty tired. This mug was at the Bucky's, but beforehand, my buddy was getting married a couple states away. My state doesn't have a Bucky's, and his state does. So after the road trip, I drove down same day. It took several hours, but I left super early in the morning. Got there. Wedding was fun, and then on the way back, I realized that one of my well, I knew this beforehand. I shouldn't have said on the way back. I discovered this, but I knew that one of my favorite camping sites in the entire country was on the way back. And I figured, I could drive home the same day, or I could camp out overnight, and just spend several hours in the woods alone. This particular camping spot there's no cell service, so it's totally isolated, very off the grid. I was the only human. Well, once the sun went down, all the other people left because there's also like a watering hole. We wouldn't jump in and go there and have a good time. So there were people there when I got there. But in the morning, I woke up and I was the only person probably within 10, 15 miles. It was really nice. But anyway, this mug is kind of a reminder of that. Anyway, enough of me. We're here for Walden. We're here for Henry David Thoreau, not me. All right. Okay. All right. Wow. Maybe I should drink some coffee before I actually read this. Mm. See how far I make it. I'm tired of it. All right. Still in Walden, still in chapter one, economy, because this chapter is how many pages is the chapter? One chapter two starts on 105. That's wild. If I should attempt to tell you how I have decided to spend my life in years past, it would probably surprise those of my readers who are somewhat acquainted with its actual history. It would certainly astonish those who know nothing about it. I will only hint at some of the enterprises which I have cherished. In any weather, at any hour of the day or night, I have been anxious to improve the nick of time, and notch it on my stick, too, to stand on the meeting of two eternities, the past and future, which is precisely the present moment. To toe that line. You will pardon some obscurities, for there are more secrets in my trade than in most men's, and yet not voluntarily kept, but inseparable from its very nature. I would gladly tell all I know about it, and never paint no admittance on my gate. I long ago lost a hound, a bay horse, and a turtle dove, and am still on their trail. Many are the travelers I have spoken concerning them, describing their tracks and what calls they answered to. I've met one or two who have heard the hound and the tramp of the horse, and even seen the dove disappear behind a cloud, and they seem as anxious to recover them as if they had lost them themselves. To anticipate not the sunrise and the dawn merely, but, if possible, nature herself. How many mornings, summer and winter, before yet any neighbor was stirring about his business, how I have been about mine. No doubt, many of my townsmen have met me returning from this enterprise, farmers starting for Boston in the twilight, or wood choppers going to their work. Mm, in my throat. It is true I never assisted the sun materially in his rising, but doubt not it was one of the last importance, only to be present at it. So many autumn, aye, and winter days spent outside the town, trying to hear what was in the wind, to hear and carry it express. I well nigh sunk all my capital in it, and lost my own breath into the bargain, running in the face of it. If it had concerned either of the political parties, depend upon it, it would have appeared in the Gazette with the earliest intelligence. At other times, watching from the observatory of some cliff or tree to telegraph any new arrival, or waiting at evening on the hilltops for the sky to fall, that I might catch something, though I never caught much, and that manna wise would dissolve again in the sun. For a long time, I was a reporter to a journal of no very wide circulation, whose editor has never yet seen fit to print the bulk of my contributions. And as is too common with writers, I got only my labor for my pains. However, in this case, my pains were their own reward. For many years, I was self appointed inspector of snowstorms and rainstorms, and did my duty faithfully. Surveyor, if not of highways, then of forest paths and all across lot routes, keeping them open, and ravines bridged and passable at all seasons, where the public heel had testified to their utility. I've looked after the wild stock of the town, which give faithful herdsmen a good deal of trouble by leaping fences, and I've had an eye to the unfrequented nooks and corners of the farm. Though I did not always know whether Jonas or Solomon worked in a particular field today, that was none of my business. I've watered the red huckleberry, the sand cherry, and the nettle tree, the red pine and the black ash, the white grape and the yellow violet, which might have withered else in dry seasons. In short, I went on thus for a long time, I may say it without boasting, faithfully minding my business till it became more and more evident that my townsmen would not, after all, admit me into the list of town officers, nor make my place a sinecure with a moderate allowance. Sinecure. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. My accounts, which I can swear to have kept faithfully, I have indeed never got audited, still less accepted, still less paid and settled. However, I have not set my heart on that. Not long since, a strolling Indian went to sell baskets at the house of a well-known lawyer in my neighborhood. Do you wish to buy any baskets? He asked. No, we do not want any, was the reply. What? Exclaimed the Indian as he went out the gate. Do you mean to starve us? Having seen his industrious white neighbor so well off, that the lawyer had only to weave arguments, and by some magic wealth and standing followed, he had said to himself, I will go into business. I will weave baskets. It is a thing which I can do. Thinking that when he had made the baskets, he would have done his part, and then it would have been the white man's to buy them. He had not discovered that it was necessary for him to make it worth the other's while to buy them, or at least make him think that it was so, or to make something else which it would be worth his while to buy. I too had woven a kind of basket of a delicate texture, but I had not made it worth anyone's while to buy them. Yet not the less, in my case, did I think it worth my while to weave them. And instead of studying how to make it worth men's while to buy my baskets, I studied rather how to avoid the necessity of selling them. The life which men praise and regard as successful is but one kind. Why should we exaggerate any one kind at the expense of others? Finding that my fellow citizens were not likely to offer me any room in the courthouse or any curacy or living anywhere else, but I must shift for myself. I turned my face more exclusively than ever to the woods where I was better known. I determined to go into business at once, and not wait to acquire the usual capital, using such slender means as I had already got. My purpose in going to Walden Pond was not to live cheaply, not to live dearly there, nor to live dearly there, but to transact some private business with the fewest obstacles, to be hindered from accomplishing which, for want of a little common sense, a little enterprise and business talent, appeared not so sad as foolish. I've always endeavored to acquire strict business habits. They are indispensable to every man. I feel like I keep licking my lips. My lips are very dry this morning because I just woke up, so coffee's good. If your trade is with the Celestial Empire, then some small If your trade is with the Celestial Empire, then some small counting house on the coast, in some Salem harbor, will be fixture enough. You will export such articles as the country affords, purely native products, much ice and pine timber, and a little granite, always in native bottoms. These will be good ventures. To oversee all the details yourself in person, to be at once pilot and captain, and owner and underwriter, to buy and sell and keep the accounts, to read every letter received, and write or read every letter sent, to superintend the discharge of imports night and day, to be upon many parts of the coast almost at the same time, Often the richest freight will be discharged upon a Jersey shore, to be your own telegraph, unweirdly sweeping the horizon. Speaking all passing vessels bound coastwise, to keep up a steady dispatch of commodities for the supply of such a distant and exorbitant market, to keep yourself informed of the state of the markets, prospect of war and peace everywhere, and anticipate the tendencies of trade and civilization, taking advantage of the results of all exploring expeditions using new passages and all improvements in navigation, charts to be studied, the position of reefs and new lights and buoys to be ascertained, and ever the logarithmic tables to be corrected, for by the error of some calculator the vessel often splits upon a rock that should have reached a friendly pier. There is the untold fate of La Perouse, universal science to be kept pace with, studying the lives of all great discoverers and navigators, great adventurers and merchants from Hanno, and the Phoenicians down to our day. In fine, account of stock to be taken from time to time, to know how you stand. It is a labor to task the faculties of a man, such problems of profit and loss of interest, of tear and tread, engaging all kinds in it, as demand a universal knowledge. I have thought that Walden Pond would be a good place for business, not solely on account of the railroad and the ice trade. It offers advantages which it may not be good policy to divulge. Interesting. It is a good port and a good foundation. No Neva marshes to be filled, though you must everywhere build on piles of your own driving. It is said that a flood tide, with a westerly wind and ice in the Neva, would sweep St. Petersburg from the face of the earth. That this business was to be entered into without the usual capital, it may not be easy to conjecture where those means that will still be indispensable to every such undertaking were to be obtained. As for clothing, to come at once to the practical part of the question, perhaps we are led oftener by the love of novelty and a regard for the opinions of men in procuring it than by a true utility. Let him who has work to do recollect that the object of clothing is, first, to retain the vital heat, and secondly, in the state of society, to cover nakedness, and he may judge how much of any necessary or important work may be accomplished, without adding to his wardrobe. Kings and queens who wear a suit but once, though made by some tailor or dressmaker to their majesties, cannot know the comfort of wearing a suit that fits. There are no better than wooden horses to hang the clean clothes on. Every day our garments become more assimilated to ourselves, receiving the impress of the wearer's character, until we hesitate to lay them aside, without such delay in medical appliances, and some such solemnity even as our bodies. No man ever stood the lower, in my estimation, for having a patch in his clothes. Yet I am sure that there is greater anxiety commonly to have fashionable or at least clean and unpatched clothes, and to have a sound conscience. But even if the rent is not mended, perhaps the worst vice betrayed is improvidence. I sometimes try my acquaintances by such tests as this: who could wear a patch or two extra seams only over the knee? Most behave as if they believed that their prospects for life would be ruined if they should do it. It would be easy for them to hobble to town with a broken leg or the broken pantaloon. Often an accident happens to a gentleman's legs, they can be mended. But if a similar accident happens to the legs of his pantaloons, there is no help for it. For he considers nor what is truly respectable, but what is respected. We know but few men, a great many coats and breeches. Dress a scarecrow in your last shift, you standing shiftless by, who would not soonest salute the scarecrow. Passing a cornfield the other day, close by a hat and coat on a stake, I recognized the owner of the farm. He was only a little more weather-beaten than when I saw him last. I've heard of a dog that barked at every stranger who approached his master's premises with clothes on, but was easily quieted by a naked thief. It is an interesting question how far men would retain their relative rank if they were divested of their clothes. Could you, in such a case, tell surely of any company of civilized men who belonged to the most respected class? When Madame Pfeiffer, in her adventurous travels around the world, from east to west, had got so near home as Asiatic Russia, she says that she felt the necessity of wearing other than a traveling dress, when she went to meet the authorities, for she was now in a civilized country where people are judged of by their clothes. Even in our democratic New England towns, the accidental possession of wealth, and its manifestation in dress and equipage alone, obtain for the possessor almost universal respect. But they who yield such respect, numerous as they are so far heathen, and need to have a missionary sent to them. Besides clothes introduced sewing, a kind of work, which you may call endless. A woman's dress, at least, is never done. A man who has at length found something to do will not need to get a new suit to do it in. For him, the old will do. That is laying dusty in the garret for an indeterminate period. Old shoes will serve a hero longer than they have served his valet. If a hero ever has a valet, bare feet are the older than shoes, and he can make them do. Only they who go to soirees and legislative halls must have new coats. Coats, coats change as often as the man changes in them. But if my jacket and trousers, my hat and shoes are fit to worship God in, they will do. Will they not? Whoever saw his old clothes, his old coat, actually worn out, resolved into its primitive elements so that it was not a deed of charity to bestow it on some poor boy, by him perchance to be bestowed on some poorer still, or shall we say richer, who could do with less. I say beware of all enterprises that require new clothes, and not rather a new wearer of clothes. If there is not a new man, how can the new clothes be made to fit? If you have any enterprises before you, try it in your old clothes. All men want, not something to do with, but something to do, or rather something to be. Perhaps we should never procure a new suit, however ragged or dirty the old, until we have so conducted, so enterprised or sailed in some way, that we feel like new men in the old. And that to retain it would be like keeping new wine in old bottles. Our molting season, like that of the fowls, must be a crisis in our lives. The loon retires to solitary ponds to spend it. Thus also the snake casts its slough, slough, S-L-O-G, no, S-L-O-U-G-H, slow. Thus also the snake casts its slough, and the caterpillar its wormy coat, by an internal industry and expansion, for clothes are but our outmost cuticle and mortal coil. Otherwise we shall be found sailing under false colors, and be inevitably cashiered at least by our own opinion, as well as that of mankind. We don garment after garment, as if we grow like oxygen, if we grow like oxygenous plants, by addition without. Oxygenous. Oxygenous, probably. Our outside and often thin and fanciful clothes are our epidermis, or false skin, which partakes not of our life, and may be stripped off here and there without fatal injury. Our thicker garments, constantly worn, are our cellular integument, or cortex, but our shirts are our leber, or true bark, which cannot be removed without girdling, and so destroying the man. I believe that all races at some seasons wear something equivalent to the shirt. It is desirable that a man be clad so simply that he can lay his hands on himself in the dark, and that he live in all respects so compactly and preparedly that if an enemy take the town, he can, like the old philosopher, walk out the gate empty-handed without anxiety. While one thick garment is for most purposes as good as three thin ones, and cheap clothing can be obtained at prices really to suit customers. While a thick coat can be bought for $5, which will last as many years, thick pantaloons for $2, cowhide boots for $1.50 a pair, a summer hat for $1/4, and a winter cap for 62.5 cents, or a better be made at home at a nominal cost, where he is so poor that clad in such a suit of his own earning, there will not be found wise men to do him reverence. When I ask for a garment of a particular form, my tailoress tells me gravely, they do not make them so now, not emphasizing the they at all, as if she quoted an authority as impersonal as the fates, and I find it difficult to get made what I want, simply because she cannot believe that I mean what I say, that I am so rash. When I hear this oracular sentence, I am for a moment absorbed in thought, emphasizing to myself each word separately that I may come at the meaning of it, that I may find out by what degree of consanguinity they are related to me, and what authority they may have in an affair which affects me so nearly. And finally, I am inclined to answer her with equal mystery, and without any more emphasis of the they. It is true, they did not make them so recently, but they do now. Of what use this measuring of me, as she did not measure my character, but only the breadth of my shoulders, as if it were a peg to hang the coat on. We worship not the graces, nor the parse, but fashion. She spins and weaves and cuts with full authority. The head monkey at Paris puts on a traveler's cap, and all the monkeys in America do the same. I sometimes despair of getting anything quite simple and honest done in this world by the help of men. They would have to be passed through a powerful press first, to squeeze their old notions out of them, so they would not get soon upon their legs again. And there would be someone in the company with a maggot in his head, hatched from an egg deposited there nobody knows when, for not even fire kills these things, and you would have lost your labor. Nevertheless, we will not forget that some Egyptian wheat was handed down to us by a mummy. On the whole, I think it cannot be maintained that dressing has in this or any country risen to the dignity of an art. At present, men make shift to wear what they can get. Like shipwrecked sailors, they put on what they can find on the beach. In a little distance, whether space or time, laugh at each other's masquerade. Every generation laughs at their old fashions, but follows religiously the new. We are amused at beholding the costume of King Henry VIII or Queen Elizabeth as much as if it was that of King and Queen of the Cannibal Islands. All costume off a man is pitiful or grotesque. It is only the serious eye peering from and the sincere life passed within it, which restrain laughter and consecrate the costume of any people. Let Harlequin be taken with a fit of the colic, and his trappings will have to serve that mood too. When a soldier is hit by the cannonball, rags are becoming his purple. The childish and savage taste of men and women for new patterns, keeps how many shaking and squinting through kaleidoscopes that they may discover the particular figure which this generation requires today. The manufacturers have learned that this taste is merely whimsical. Of two patterns which differ only by a few threads, more or less of a particular color, the one will be sold readily. The other lie on the shelf, though it frequently happens that after the lapse of a season, the latter becomes the more fashionable. Comparatively, tattooing is not the hideous custom which it is called. It is not barbarous merely because the printing is skin deep and unalterable. I cannot believe that our factory system is the best mode by which men may get clothing. The condition of the operatives is becoming every day more like that of the English, and it cannot be wondered at, since as far as I have heard or observed, the principal object is not that mankind may be well and honestly clad, but unquestionably that the corporations may be enriched. In the long run, men hit only what they aim at. Therefore, if they should fail immediately, they had better aim at something high. I think that's a good stopping point because he looks like he shifts. I don't need to say shifts, it's just shifts. Still warming up the tongue. But he shifts topics to shelter. So this whole little bit was about clothing for the most part. And just exploring. I mean, this is so timely. It's written 200 years ago, but it's still pretty applicable today. I mean, yeah, fashion, trends are really just that. It's just trends. A lot of it doesn't have sticking power, and it's going to fade away eventually. So, in one sense, dress, you do you. If you find something comfortable, like, I don't know a lot of people that would be wearing flannel. I mean, I just wear that indoors, but still, I've come to appreciate comfort in clothes or practicality in clothes as the older I get. I do remember, when I was in college 10 years ago, I was definitely dressing much differently than I am now. A lot bolder, a lot louder, um, mixing up different pieces to see what would work and what didn't. For the most part, I was dressing for myself, but there was a huge. I mean, dressing for myself in that I was trying new things to see what would work and different outfits I cared more about. And to be fair, I think I cared a lot about what I looked like, especially back then. Less so now. Um, on that note, though, there's still it's like as a person in society, I still think it's good to be presentable. Shave, take care of yourself, wear deodorant, style your hair. Um, that shows that you're still willing to be a part of society. I think if you're opting out, then do whatever the heck you want. But if you're opting in, you work a respectable job, take care of yourself. Anyway, that's beside the point of fashion in general. I think he's talking about more trends and the money and just the effort we spend to look good in the eyes of others. I think that's the bigger thing. In the eyes of others, we try so hard to get others' approval and to get status. In another weird way, similar to what we were talking about the inner tyrant, Aesop's fables. Um, what I had mentioned was, tyrant will just go forward and not consider others, but in doing so, it's being selfish because it's really only after what he wants. In the same way, I think with fashion and getting respect and attention and admiration in the eyes of others, it's really a selfish thing um, at the core of it. Because if we didn't really care about ourselves and how we look and where we dress, would we do any of these things? I don't know if we would. I don't know if I would. So that's something fun to take away. Is trends are going to fade away. If you want to dress comfortably, dress comfortably. Yeah. I'm gonna have a ton of thoughts about that today, but it is good to think about just in general, like how well the overall message. It's good to think about how do we view ourselves in the eyes of others, and are we vying for their attention, for their respect, and why? Sometimes we don't need to be vying for their attention or admiration. Is that really the ultimate end? Is that what matters? I'm thinking about a book I read previously called The Courage to Be Disliked. And that kind of rocked everything that I hold dear internally to like the way, because I tend to act out of deference to people's opinions. And as I'm getting older, I'm steering more away from that. Or historically, I should say, I have been like that, looking for other people's attention and living for that. Whereas as I get older, I realize that's I don't want to spend my energy there. That's just not where the value lies for me. So don't live for other people. Don't let other people's opinions shake or sway. I wouldn't say the way you live. I think it's good to be in a community where you're held accountable. If you're doing something stupid, then you should have people around you that say, "Hey, you're doing something stupid." People that love you and you know that you know love you and you love them back. But don't ultimately chase other people's opinions because a lot of people don't have a say. They don't have a dictate in what you like or where you go, what you do, and they shouldn't. Because in the theme of living a life of quiet desperation, as he mentioned earlier, and I think in other works he mentions this as well, the quiet desperation is from living, partially from living for other people rather than living for yourself or for some higher purpose. Um, there are three things you can kind of live for. You can live for yourself. You can live for other people, um, which is like other people as in um, like selfishly, like looking for their approval and weighing their opinion as the gospel, or you live for something higher than yourself. Personally, I think the third option is the way to go. Because in doing so, you both live for that ultimate mission and for others as well. And in doing so, you enrich yourself, but not thinking about yourself. It's a mystery, I know. Anyway, I think that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for bearing with me, kind of tumbling through some of that. Actually, two notes before we sign off this video. One, I know that there are some books that I'll be reading here. Walden is one of them. I'm not sure what else is going to be out there like that, but it was written 200 years ago. Um, so there's going to be some language probably in some of these books that I would not use and I don't think is necessarily appropriate today. But because I think in one of the last episodes, Henry David Thoreau said the word Negro or wrote the word Negro. I wouldn't say that at all today. Um, I don't believe that's right. I don't believe that's appropriate to the Black community. But that's the way it was 200 years ago. I'm not saying it's right, and by reading it, I'm not endorsing it necessarily as right. But I do think it's also important to point out that there is a difference 200 years ago, and to revise it at all, to kind of gloss over it, would be to negate or neglect that whole history of America. So I'm not going to edit anything that I see in the book unless it's an obvious like curse word like the F bomb or something like that, for the sake of preservation. Number two, I wanted to also mention that all of the books I'm going to read on this channel, unless otherwise specified, are going to be in public domain. Because I tried to, but I thought it'd be really fun in a video that I recorded, but then I never uploaded because I had a thought afterwards. I was going to read the Chronicles of Narnia and go through all those books by chapter, but that's not public domain. I didn't even think about that. And I'd uploaded it and I had scheduled it and I was ready to go. And I was like, wait a minute. I had a thought. I was like, I could get probably copyright strikes for this. Looked it up. Turns out that was the case. So I deleted the video. So I'm primarily going to be reading things in public domain, which is why Walden's here. Aesop's Fables is another one I'm currently working through with you guys. What I'm really excited about is Sherlock Holmes, because it turns out that's public domain. And I love me some Sherlock Holmes, so we're gonna get to that very, very soon. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.